Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of It Ain't Weak to Speak. My name is Sam Webb, and this show is dedicated to ending the stigma around mental health through community, connection, and the hard-hitting truth. I'll be speaking with guests from all over the world about life to inspire and to educate people to speak up so that we can save more lives. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Welcome, Mr. Runnalls, to the podcast, mate. It's an absolute pleasure looking at your head while you're sitting right there in your comfy ass chair in Melbourne, mate. What's been happening? Welcome on board.
No, thanks for having me, mate. This is the best way to start the morning when you're staring at Webby through the lens of Zoom. So I'm very grateful, mate, and I love the work that you're doing. So looking forward to having a chat. And it's always good with you, and it's always good when you can step in and feel supported to talk about whatever. So there's no fear in this moment right now.
Awesome, man. And I'm very grateful, as is the entire Living fam, for all the work that you do. And we'll no doubt talk about that at some stage on this podcast. But to give our listeners a little bit of context about how you and I met and how we got in touch with one another, can you take us back a few years, Matty Runnalls, and talk to us about how you got into this space in particular, but your own journey and how that led you to the mental health sector, so to speak?
Yeah, mate. And I think the most important part to start when I tell my story anytime is to acknowledge that I had the best upbringing ever. You know, I'm very, very grateful. A lot of people don't get that. I have the most supportive, caring, compassionate, loving family ever. My mum and my dad are like my two best friends, and my brother's very supportive as well. And we get along like a house on fire. So, you know, I'm very lucky in that regard because, as I said, a lot of people don't get that same upbringing. So I've always had that endless amounts of support from day one to this very moment that I sit in right now, and the ability to pick up and choose whatever I wanted to do and be backed and supported 100% in that. And when you grow up like that and you're, you know, a popular kid and you're at school and you've got the best of everything and you're in the sport and you go into state trials and you're in every sporting team and you're doing everything well, life was dandy, mate. I was, as I said, an energetic, bubbly, cocky, smart ass, walked around as a 12-year-old thinking that how easy's life and how good's this. And I couldn't understand how anyone else's life would be any different. And then I just remember at 12 years old, I got a tap on the shoulder from my old man, and there was a group of us playing cricket, little 12-year-olds waiting for our parents to finish their cricket. And it was of a Thursday night at training, and I got the tap on the shoulder that we'd lost one of our teammates to suicide. And I remember that. And I don't have much of a great memory back then, but I do clearly remember that. And it was the feeling of exactly what I just said. It was just like, how can anyone else's life be as bad as that they would need to take that course of action? And it was that ignorance that I had because there's that lack of education that we get through schools, and we're going back, 18 years now. So it wasn't talked about. It wasn't a thing. And it was a struggle to understand how someone could be going through that emotion. And that led to my spiral out of control. I mean, 4 more years down the track at the age of 16, I'd lose my second mate and my favorite high school teacher. And that favorite high school teacher was probably one of the only ones that really gave me a sense of love, belonging, connection. And it's always those people that give you a love, belonging, connection that have a sense of pain, mate, I feel. So they're always the best people. And unfortunately, he would lose his life. And it started to really hit me then. And I started to, dip into an education around the mental health and mind and behavioral health field to try and better understand it, knowing not selfishly, not because I wanted to help and support those people, because I started to identify that I was going through some exact same thoughts and feelings of my own. And a lot of them stemmed from the pressures to continue to be this bubbly, energetic person that was great at everything that he did, and hold up this, facade that I was happy all the time. And, the real pressures of the real world started to get to me. I was a plumber at the age of 17 and went out into the real world and was met by horrible bosses, mate, physical and emotional abuse. I was hit with shovels, hit with roof sheets, dropped roof screws on my head as a plumber. And all I ever wanted to do every single day as a plumber was show up again and get my pay. There was no, if someone treated me like that right now, there's not a chance they would get away with that. But it was my inability to have a self-worth around who I was and what I was providing in the workplace that I just showed up every single day and continued to be met with shovels, shirt fronts,
How
just
did you do
horrible
that, mate?
abuse.
But I just want to just jump in here really quickly because I don't want to forget this question. A couple of them. Um, how did you identify? What were the warning signs that you identified within yourself, where you sort of thought, okay, well, some of these problems are now affecting me, and I need to start learning more about this? And two, what made you stick out the work and keep getting to work? Obviously, you needed to get paid and earn a living and whatnot, and obviously, you would have had other pressures in your life at that stage, no doubt, as a young growing teenager and a young adult, I should say. I'll start there.
Yeah, mate. And great question, because the most important thing that I found about myself then I was going through that, as I said, I was an energetic, bubbly, cocky, because I was so good at everything that I picked up and touched. Everything that I touched was, I'm obsessive compulsive in terms of if I'm in, I'm all in. And if I'm out, I'm all out. Like, I do things until they're done properly.
Toto and nada, all or nothing.
Yes, that's right, mate. So, I mean, I was building. I was a first year plumbing apprentice, and I'd get handed a house plan, and I would build that house as a plumber. I'd do the plumbing on that house from the ground to the roof with no supervision. That's how good it was at my job as a 17-year-old first year plumber. But as soon as I started to get met with physical and emotional abuse, I couldn't even do up the nut on a plumbing fixture. I couldn't even dig a trench without doubting that I was digging it in the wrong spot. And
Wow.
everything that I started to do, I was just met with, I'm a failure, I'm worthless, and I'm a burden on the world. And those three things were core limiting beliefs that I still live with to this day, but they were just reiterated to me at every stage of my journey. So during primary school, when I've gone back and done a lot of timeline work on myself, a lot of teachers would tell me like I was booted out in the corridor a lot and hard to stay engaged a lot. And a lot of teachers would always remind me that, Matt, your parents must be ashamed of yourself, ashamed of you. You'll never amount to anything. And that was worthless and failure, and I was a burden. And then as when I went out into the real world and started plumbing, it was the same thing. You're worthless. You're a failure. You're a burden. And these things started to lead to my chronic suicidal ideation and these thoughts of suicide.
What age were
Uh,
you at this stage?
16, 17, 18.
Yeah, right. And when
And
it went to suicide, suicidalation and whatnot,
yeah. And you try and
sorry,
kick back off it at that age, mate. You just really like, nah, I don't have anything to whinge about. I've got the best upbringing, best life, best support all around me. I've got the best of everything. How can I whinge about, well, my situation when you look at other people in the world and through that, because I had such a beautiful upbringing, supportive, caring family, I suppressed everything because talking about my thoughts, feelings, and emotions at that stage would have made me feel, the idea of that made me feel like more of a burden. Like, how can I be whinging about this? So shut up, Matt, and don't talk about it. And that led to some pretty nasty thoughts and situations, mate. And
How
yeah,
do
I
you
just
do it
become
though?
shocking at everything I picked up and touched because I had the confidence just absolutely smacked out of me. I just had an inability to complete any task because I would just out of sheer fear and worry that I was doing it wrong because of the abuse that I'd copped through primary school and into the real world.
So you sort of second guessed yourself a lot after that torment. After a number of times, it sort of took over your thinking process, and you lost a bit of self esteem, confidence, and everything else. Sort of started falling away from you at such a young age. How bad did the thoughts get? And yeah, like what were those thoughts going on in your mind at that young age?
Yeah, they were really bad thoughts. I mean, as I said, you try to ignore them because you're just like it's the first time you've ever received them. So you're like, nah, come on, snap out of it. That's not realistic. That's not what you want to do. But these thoughts were telling me that I'd end my own life by my own two hands, and they were just so severe and so crippling. I remember sitting on the edges of my bed, just shaking and rocking back and forth, like this was not. Yeah, that was. I just didn't know how to escape that. It was crippling. It was
Come,
debilitating, and it was exhausting.
okay, and mate, I appreciate you sharing that, brother. And how I mean, you mentioned earlier you were very supported growing up with an amazing family and a great household, and you were really really good at everything that you tried your hand and your luck at. When you're sitting on the end of your bed, rocking up and down, having suicidal thoughts, real hard, dark thoughts of I might not belong here, and people probably be better off without me, um, and I'm a burden on people's lives. Did you reach out to your family for help at that stage? And
Mm.
if yeah, like what was the process around thinking about reaching out for support at a young age? How did that play out in your mind?
Well, I got to 19, 20 years old, 19, I think it was, Webby, and I lost my fourth mate to suicide, and it was sitting up the back of his funeral and hearing the ignorance of people, talking about how he's selfish and look at what he's left behind and look at the devastation he's left on the community. It really angered me. really made me grit down on my teeth and go, oh, this culture and this society is sick. Like, this poor guy has died by his own two hands because he believed in this narrative that was so untrue about himself. And I was going through the exact same thing. So for me, it was like I started probing my mum about what would have he done to go and seek help and support. Like, I knew that the idea was that you go in to seek a GP and a mental health plan. That's all I really knew. And I knew there was medication there. I didn't know about all these other measures in which you can use these days. And so I probed my mum. And the problem was my mum was a pharmacist in the area. So when you grow up in a small regional town, if I went into a doctor's, I'd put one and two together and I'm going to get a script for medication. My mum's going to see that script come across a chemist. I'm going to have to tell her. And to me, it just prolonged it because I didn't want to have to tell my mum anything. I wanted to hide that because I didn't want to be
Why?
a burden on her.
Okay. Okay. You want to be a burden. And did it go any further than that? Was it like a thought of worry or a thought of, not even the burden, the thought of just, I don't know how to explain it. Like, I know the feelings I'm experiencing, but I don't think I could actually put it into words. Did it ever get like that?
There was a lot of me believing that what I was experiencing wasn't valid because of the incredible upbringing and support that I had. So it was just like, no one's going to listen to you, Matt, because why would you have any excuse or reasons to whinge and complain about your lifestyle? So yeah, I mean, it prolonged me for so long getting the help and support that I needed out of sheer fear of the thoughts and stigma and embarrassment of what others might bring. So, I didn't fear death. I thought that was a much easier option than to go and get help because of the fear that was around me in other people, and the stigmas that were carried. So, I still remember I ended up going in and I said to my mum, I've got an appointment, and I told her, and I just remember saying to mum, and mum goes, is this really what you want to do? Is this what you think that, that's where you're at? And she was really caring and compassionate in that and held space for me. And I said, yeah, I think I'm really, really struggling here. And I don't know what else to do. And so I walked in and I sat down and told a GP exactly my life story and what I was feeling and how I was trekking. And she was in tears and I was in tears. And but I remember it feeling a lot better. And I remember walking out of that place with, a therapist and a script for medication on day one after telling my story. And, I thought that was what I didn't know any different. So that script for me was like, well, if I take this medication and I keep going back to therapy, I'll be back. I'll be good. I'll be good. And how ignorant I was to how much work it takes to be well. And, I continued to struggle for a long, long time after that.
Mm.
I've,
We talk,
yeah.
Yeah, right, mate. So, and as far as, going to that first, doctor's appointment and, mustering up I guess, the courage and being vulnerable to be able to get to that stage where you can share it. And, big love to everyone who might be listening, who might be going through their own battles. And it's not as easy as just waking up one morning and just, going, all right, I'm going to go see someone and speak to someone. For my own personal journey, I mean, speaking up and seeking help was probably the toughest thing. And
Toughest,
admitting
but you do feel a lot lighter for it. And I
absolutely,
remember walking out of there with
absolutely.
a spring in my step thinking, yeah, I've got this. I've just made the hardest decision that there is to make, the one that stops everyone from getting help and support. I've just made that.
Yeah.
Surely I'm on the peak now and I can start to see some light at the end of this tunnel. And I remember how I felt. And that's why I encourage a lot of people to go and seek that help and support and to find the right people, because it does make you feel like that. And the more people that you have around you that understand your journey, the easier it does become. But there is a lot of work in between to get yourself to a place of consistent wellness, because I went through a lot more shit than I did pre 20 years old after that.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. So for people that have been on this journey, mate, who've mustered up the courage and they've worked on themselves, whether it's listening to podcast or learning more about mental illness or mental health challenges through online forums or articles or listening to other lived experience stories. What about all the people that have been and thought, okay, let's go see a doctor now and hopefully things start working out for the better, but they don't have the best experience? Because I hear this quite often in my line of work, as I'm sure no doubt you do, mate, with everything that you do with Mindfull Aus. But at Livin, we thoroughly encourage seeking professional help. But unfortunately, we all know that it's not as easy as just finding the first person and expecting it to work. So what are you going to say to the people that might be listening right now that haven't had the best experience, that have probably given up on seeking professional help?
Yeah, I mean, we don't all wear the same coloured, same fabric, same size tracky pants, mate. So It's about going in and shopping for the right one, and it takes some time and it's tough work, but and it's a battle not easily won, but it takes change, it takes determination, and it takes acceptance. And there's a right fit out there for you, and there's some really, really good professional help and services in this country. I mean, America as well. I'm familiar with the setup over in America as well, but these two countries have some of the best advocates, organizations, and professional services in the world. It's about
Absolutely.
identifying them and making people aware of who they are and where they are, and to know that one size does not fit all. So, it took me 20 odd psychiatrists and psychologists to find someone that I felt comfort in. I mean, I know a lot of people will pull out of the race before that. For some reason, I had a burning desire in myself to get well.
Mm.
And I'm so glad that I did, but I know a lot of people will give up prior to that, which is sad and breaks my heart, because I truly believe that as I said, there's so many great advocates and services and support systems out there that will be for you
Mm.
100%. But it takes you to bite down on the tongue and on the lip, and a bit of grit and determination, and to find that person, because knowing that you're worth that. So it's nothing. It's not easy. It never has been and
No, it's
never
not
will
easy.
be. But it is bloody worthwhile, mate. And yeah, I sit in this chair and have these conversations now, and it's something that I never would have imagined.
Yeah, mate, absolutely. And it's beautiful to hear. It's beautiful to watch your journey unfold, man. And very proud of the work that you've done, not only for yourself and on yourself, but for the people around you. And going, stepping back into your journey to getting back on track to start living again, so to speak. What was it like when you found that right fit and you ended up speaking to the psychologist or the psychiatrist, and they because at the end of the day, they do hand down, some type of diagnosis at the end of the day, don't they? What was that
Yeah.
like to you, and how did that make you feel? Because I know seeking help's one thing, but then getting told, oh, you suffer from, general anxiety disorder, or you suffer with chronic depression or whatever it is, or bipolar disorder, it can sort of make people feel even worse at times. How did you accept that? And what was your diagnosis at that time?
Yeah, so at the age of 20, I was diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety and sleep insomnia, and my sleep insomnia was quite severe. However, I mean, after that process, I jumped on the medication and did everything that I thought was right at that time, not having an education around what an actual wellness menu looked like. And I continued to struggle because I wasn't putting any time and effort into myself and the work that I needed to do, because I had no understanding what that looked like. I'd never heard of self-care. I'd never heard of holistic approaches. I'd never heard of strength-based models to recovery. I hadn't heard about any of this, mate. But I got myself into the field of mental health advocacy and started spreading awareness about this thing. As I said, selfishly, because I wanted to be understood, but I also didn't want to sit up the back of any more funerals. I mean, to that very point in my life, I'd lost 4 people to suicide. Between the ages of 20 and 29 right now, I've lost another 5. So,
Wow.
I mean, it breaks my heart, mate. It breaks my heart, but it's something that, is an everyday practice for me to stay in a place of wellness. And my journey didn't stop there when I was diagnosed, and I went on it. I'm a big believer that your obsessions become your possessions. And so for me, it was about, if I'm going to be in this field of advocacy and I'm going to be out there trying to use my experiences for the betterment of others, I've got to find out how this mind and behavior works and get on top of it, and do whatever it takes. And I think because I was knocked back by so many psychologists and psychiatrists that just recoiled in fear. I'd tell them my story. Hey, I've lost 4 mates. I've been homeless. I've had suicide attempts. And they'd sit there and you'd see them recoil. And so, and that's my journey. I want to reiterate that that's my journey. I don't want anyone else to feel that that's going to be theirs. There's some very good people out there that do this work. Um, and I think it was the best teacher. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, mate, was the fact that no one really wanted to deal with me, because it taught me how strong I could be to myself with every waking minute. And that's why I'm huge. My branding is huge on 1,440 minutes in a day, because I got 1,440 opportunities to become a better version of myself. And with those minutes, to be able to use them to give back and to help others. And I think that was the best learning that I ever got, was not having someone there for me, because I tapped into the strength of who I truly am. And we are so strong, mate, when being strong is our only option.
Yeah, I agree. Amen to that. And I think everyone's got the power to help themselves and someone else. Sometimes it can take a little bit more time and a little bit more energy and a little bit more homework, and things don't happen overnight. So it's important to reiterate the importance of, self-care and getting back on track to feeling mentally well and physically well, can take a lot of time, but it does require a lot of input. You can't expect just to go seek professional help and think everything's going to be all right straight away. What I
Yeah.
can almost promise everyone is, it will be worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to put that wellness back in your own hands. And I mean, it's a process and it takes work. And, fast forward the story, I live with bipolar disorder and I was diagnosed with that at the age of 26 after losing my sixth mate to suicide. And that was the kick up the ass that I really needed. And I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Nothing changed for me. It's just that I understand now that this is what I experience. And through that, I go out and obsess over what that looks like for other people around the world, for in science, in evidence-based practices, to understand who I am. And by understanding who I am, I live a healthy, happy, and fulfilling life, mate, and come up with the tools, techniques, and strategies to live in consistent places of wellness. I mean, there's these misconceptions around bipolar disorder about people being crazy in the weather, and we're seeing it right now with Kanye West, and it breaks your heart because the more we laugh at these episodes and situations, the more people we silence that know that what they're living through is a life sentence, and it doesn't have to be. I mean, I believe truly that what I live with is a gift. It is who I am, and it's carved me into the person that I am, and I've been able to create a lot of magic in the world with that.
Absolutely. And to everyone listening right now that might be struggling with some type of mental health challenge or a diagnosable mental illness, there's a lot of power and a lot of gift in that, where you can use to your own advantage, not only to help yourself, but certainly impact the lives of other people around you in more ways than one, no doubt about that. And you've done exactly that, Maddie, with Mindfull Aus. I've been on the road with you here in the States and in Australia. We've been fortunate enough to do some speaking tours together, and it's an amazing experience being able to get up there and share the stage and listen to your journey and other people's stories, because as you mentioned earlier, man, it really does educate you to better understand what we're dealing with ourselves, but what we're dealing with for other people, so that we can be the voices for all those that are silent right now.
Yeah, mate. I think, going on those tours and being involved in mental health advocacy, I've met some of the most amazing people in the world, but my rediscovery of hope was visible in other people's kindness towards me, was visible in stories of hope, healing, and recovery. Other people like yourself, like Dan, like Kevin, when we're in America, where I hear these people's stories and I see that they're living with these challenges, but living healthy, happy, and fulfilling lives and overcoming their adversities and owning their adversities, that made me sit back rows deep and go, hey, if he can do it, I can do it. And if I can hang around these people and learn from these people, I'm going to be in a better position tomorrow than I am today. And that's where I think that this is really important part of my journey, is being my own teacher, is because if you surround yourself by these sorts of people and this information, and you obsess over these things that you want to achieve and do and be, you really can get there and achieve it. And I mean, those speaking tours, there was some that drained me and zapped me working in this field, because I didn't have the full protection measures in to look after myself like I do now. And I feel a little bit of guilt for that, because a lot of the time you're out there talking about these things, trying to help people, knowing that deep down under that, I wasn't helping myself as much as I was helping everyone else. And that's a part of the journey, mate. And we all trip up and make mistakes from time to time, but I see mistakes and failures and all that as growth points. And I want as many growth points in my life as possible, because they show that exactly that I'm growing, mate, and learning every day. And that's the best part, most exciting part about getting out of bed every day.
It is, mate. It is. And you mentioned a really important point there. Mistakes aren't mistakes. They're only learning. So you can only grow and learn, in my mind. And mistake, failure, I replace that with thoughts of learning, learning curves, and you grow. So, mate, really good point to make. And let's talk about, managing bipolar for yourself. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about the organization that you're working with, obviously, and you started in Mindfull Aus, and the amazing work you're doing in Australia. But before we get to that, I do want to talk to you about bipolar in itself, because there is, as you mentioned, a lot of, misconceived and lack of understanding, people from all walks of life, and not because they generally mean it and they don't have the good intentions. It's just that they just don't understand it thoroughly. But I want to ask you, as someone who's diagnosed with bipolar disorder, how you manage it. And, I've been with you, especially when we're in the States, where we both had bad days, they were shitty days. And we really struggle with certain things. And I want to ask you how you're managing yourself day to day, And when things sort of slip up, what's really important for you to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, I think the biggest learning for me, mate, and this is why I find it so exciting on this journey, and I love what I go through. I mean, because it's just making me into such a better person every single day. And you know, bipolar is like I truly believe it's a gift, and people roll their eyes at that. They really will, and that's their journey, and this is my journey. And I just felt like, if I'm going to kick back off something and believe that it's a burden my whole life and I don't want to live with it and it's a life sentence, well, then life's going to be shit for a long time. So it's not going anywhere. There's no cure for it. So I'm not going anywhere either. And I'll promise everyone that. So I'm gonna learn to love it and dance with it and maneuver it and create magic with it. And through every single day, I try and, a big part of my journey is self-reflection, mate, and understanding what was good, bad, and ugly in each day, and how I can take forward the things that were good in the day to create consistency. And the things that were bad, they're action signals, mate. I've got to action those things. All the thoughts and that, that busy head that I had for a long time of just do this, be that, anxious this, overwhelmed that, stress that, they're action signals. And when I just slow the process down into a place of stillness and understand that every single thought I experience is an action signal for change, either good or bad change, and carving me into the person that I'm meant to become. So, I've become really, really big and very thorough in my wellness plans. The first 90 minutes of every day sets me up for an unbreakable day. There's a lot of science to prove how important that first 90 minutes is since wake up. Practices of gratitude, meditation, cold showers made every single day, breath work before I go to work, positive affirmations, because if I can't tell myself that I'm worthy every single day, I'll get someone else to. Compassion, spreading love and kindness with my phone every single day. We're so connected in this world. It's so easy to reach out. I know what it feels like to receive a nice message, so I'm going to send them out to everyone that I can each day. And at the very worst, it fills me up. So exercise, mate. These things are very important, and they're all things that we possess unlimited amounts of. They're free. I got into yoga and meditation. I've, as I said, value alignment. When my values align with my behaviors every single day, I live in satisfaction. But when I show up as someone who I'm not, at the fear of someone else, I weaken my whole body, including my immune system. So these sorts of things, mate, that I've become really obsessed with. And I put it down to reflection, because if I have a bad day, I want to know why. And if I'm going through some thoughts that aren't warranted or I don't want to experience again, I'm going to action them. And I think that's really important, is to know that it's tough. Not every day is another challenge, but I mean, as I said before, it's not easy, never will be, never has been, but it is simple. Life is simple when we put the time and effort into our brain the same way we do to our body to look well, we do to our brain to feel well.
Yeah,
and we've got to
I
start
agree.
building that six pack on our brain the same way we do to our body.
Yeah.
And I try and do that every single day with holistic and strength-based models, and I play to who I am at my very core.
Yeah, mate. Well said. Absolutely amazingly said, man. And kudos to you for investing the time and energy into better understanding, what you live with and how you manage it and how you thrive in this life, and what you can do to be better every single day, mate. I love that. And I think that's really important for a lot of people who are listening right now, to know that this isn't an overnight success. Nothing really happens overnight. It's a long game, and you got to be patient. You got to be persistent. And, if things don't work, again, it's a learning point. Let's try something that does work. But one of the most important things, and you mentioned it, Matty, is, we train and we talk so openly, right, about physical health and well-being, like, yeah, I'm pescatarian, or, yeah, no, I don't eat red meat, or I'm vegetarian, and I love training. I love running. Like I put a post up today, did my first long run in a few weeks since I was sick with COVID-19. And I'm telling you right now, like, we need to invest the same time and energy, if not more, into our brains, even when they're healthy and even when they've got that six pack. A lot of people
Proactive approach, mate. Got to be
yeah,
proactive.
and a lot of people think that, okay, I've done all this work on my brain. I'm at a place of peace. I know what works, what doesn't work. I wake up, do my 90-minute wellness plan, self-affirmations, all this great stuff. And then they sort of just let it go by the wayside and give up because it's working. But you've got to keep at it, don't you, mate? How important is that for you to just keep doing it, regardless of if you're a 10 or you're a 2? How important is that to you?
It's a lifestyle, mate. It's 90 days. Well, I mean, the evidence is a bit wishy-washy at the moment, but 21 to 90 days to create a habit, and 90 to 365 to create a lifestyle. And this is a lifestyle choice. I mean, the way I've always looked at it is I was in a bathtub of crap, bathing in that for a long, long time, believing that poor me, sucks, this is hard, life's difficult, blah, 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 blah. Once I got out of that bathtub and dried myself off and cleaned myself off and started to work through these processes, I realized that I consistently get to a place of wellness. However, if I take a day off, this wellness plan, and I start to go into bad old habits, and I start missing exercise, or I don't practice, I practice gratitude every single morning. If I don't do these things will creep back into my life. Negativity seeps into me very, very quickly if I allow it. And so I just know that it's not worth having days where I give it a miss or have a break, and it's not a chore to do these things for me. Writing in my gratitude journal fills me full of smiles and laughter, mate, and it's lovely to read back. Sending messages to my friends to show that I care about them every single morning fills me full of joy. These aren't chores. Exercise is not a chore. Eating healthy is hard. I'll give you the hot tip. But I mean, these things, you just know that it's going to contribute to a better tomorrow, mate. And,
yeah, true.
Every single day I'm trying to acquire new skill sets so that I can trial them and see if they're for me. And if they're not, the beauty of mental health advocacy and mind and behavioral health industry that we work in is that you're able to give those tools back to everyone. And soon that skill set that I have growing up of just believing that the one set menu for help and support was therapy and medication, all of a sudden that menu becomes lists of thousands of things. And once we change this culture around the world that is just the one set menu to get help, to this menu that has pages and pages for people to understand just how many resources there are to build the emotional resilience in our brain and to love the uniqueness of who we are, this world will become a much better place, mate. And it's all about changing that narrative for everyone else to let us know that what we live with is a gift. Whoever you are, however you are, you've got to learn to love yourself some more, believe in yourself, and be more of yourself, mate. And through that, I've just found a consistent place of wellness, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
You heard it, ladies and gentlemen. Live it, love it, learn it, and be happy with yourself and be kind to yourself. I think is really important too. Don't beat yourself up when you're having rough days, but also work hard to identify and acknowledge and accept what you might be experiencing so that you can learn to grow the next day that you might experience something like that. But never give up hope, never give up on yourself, because everyone out there has the chance to live an amazing life and make great lifestyle changes to not only support themselves, but their loved ones. And we hear it firsthand here with Maddie Runnalls on the podcast. Maddie, I want to learn more about, can we share with the audience a bit more about your work with Mindfull Aus, mate? I know you started Mindfull Aus, many years ago.
Yeah, so 2006.
What's the goals? What's the vision, and where is it going?
Yeah, 2016, I launched Mindfull Aus just as a Facebook page. It was my way of sharing stories of hope, healing, and recovery, the same way that got me to a place of acceptance of my journey. So that Facebook page started to grow a lot of traffic, and I started to get really passionate about what we were doing. And, the thought that saved my life in 2012 at my first attempt was the thought of having kids. And that was the voice that rang thick in my head, mate. And a little voice said to me, Matt, you got to be here one day to have a family. And that was what saved my life. And when you combine that thought with the thought of losing 9 mates now to suicide, you combine that, I want to create a world in which my kids grow up that's one that's much better than the one we live in. And I want to change the culture around what it looks like to be healthy and well and to live with diagnosis. So for me, I set out to create an early intervention primary school program, and I want to work with kids as young as 3 and 4 years old. And that's what I'm doing right now at Mindfull Aus. We have a primary program called Healthier Hearts and Lighter Minds, and it does exactly that. We build healthier hearts. We teach gratitude, kindness, empathy, and compassion. And lighter minds. We talk about meditation. We talk about ways to express our emotions and talk and communicate better. And we do that via identifying, controlling, and expressing our emotions, the 5 core emotions in our human body, which is fear, anger, disgust, sadness, and joy, with the 6th emotion being shock and surprise. So, we get in there with kids that are 3 and 4 years old, and these kids show us the true meaning of life, Webby. I mean, look at me right now, smiling, talking about it, because these kids show us what it's like to live. They have energy, they're bubbly, they have an imagination, they create, and they do not give a shit about what other people think.
I love that.
And yet, as soon as we become an adult, we grow out of all of those things, and we start to be what society wants us to be.
Mm-hmm.
And we start to point fingers at everyone for why the world looks like it does, instead of just creating and having imagination and just going about things the way we should with a big grin on our face. And these kids do it brilliantly. So, to work with them every single day and to see them 3, 4 years old sit there and meditate, and we see these kids, identify their emotions via a color. Hey, Matt, I'm
So
feeling
cool.
purple today. And I'm like, why is that, mate? Why are you feeling purple? He's like, well, I tripped over and I was worried that, I broke my arm. So I was feeling purple. And what's purple? Purple's fear. How do we come back from fear? Oh, well, someone said something nice to me and it made me feel yellow. It made me feel joy. We can change the dialogue around what it looks like to talk about our emotions very simply and very easily when we make people aware that talking about our thoughts, feelings, and emotions is a true sign of strength and a very beautiful thing.
Yeah, mate,
So
that's
that's what
epic.
we do a lot of at Mindfull Aus, mate. We build around our primary school program, and we support our kids in our primary schools by training up teachers, parents, and community members, sporting clubs, corporates, workplaces with evidence-based mental health trainings, youth mental health trainings, and workshops and programs to build their blueprint to wellness so that they can live healthy and well, so their kids can grow up in a better environment. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing that we're doing, and I love the work that we do and the team that we've got here. And I mean, we're supported by other organisations here in Australia like Living, and we just follow the lead of many great advocates and organisations that are doing just amazing work, mate. It's quite inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely, it is, mate. There are a lot of great people out there doing great things, but to make a really important note, mate, I love the work that you're doing amongst primary school. I feel like that is an area that doesn't really get spoken about much. People think that we've got to train the brain, at high school or at workplace, but this conversation should be had much younger, man, like exactly where you're doing it, like in primary schools, and doing it through different types of language. Don't
Yeah,
necessarily need to talk about mental health or mental illness to
no,
primary school kids for it to
we
be effective. You advocate through emotions, feelings,
we don't
colors,
we don't use those words,
images.
mental health and suicide, at all. There's no need to, and hopefully
No.
we can create a world one day where those words aren't required, because we understand how to look after ourselves, and we've changed that dialogue and narrative so that people feel comfortable about talking about who they are. The human
Mm.
being, mate, is wired for love, belonging, and connection. It is wired for those three things. When we find a disconnect of those three things, that's when we see a lot of mental illness being expressed. So if we can change this dialogue to realize as young as 3 and 4 that what we need to do as human beings, and the whole true meaning of life is to live in the betterment of others and provide love, belonging, connection. This world's going to be a beautiful place to live in, and that's what I want to create, mate.
Mm. Bloody powerful, mate, isn't it? You've been doing it, and I've been watching the journey. Obviously, as I said earlier, we got the chance to speak and whatnot together, and that's probably going back to close to 2016, 17 when we did this over in the States. We did a couple of tours, and man, to see where Mindful Aus is at now, it's amazing the support that you guys are getting, and it's amazing with the work that you're doing at front and back of house, and it's just beautiful to see so many great organizations coming together to support each other in this space, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, when I've always said, and my mentor rams it home to me all the time, mate, nothing is impossible when your why is compelling enough. And
Mm.
there's been so many times where I've thought about giving up. I'll give you a hot tip. You bash your head against the wall trying to create change, but nothing is impossible when your why is compelling enough. And my why and your why and Casey's why and Lukey's why at Living, everyone's why is huge. We know why we're doing this work, and we wake up every single day. We bounce out of bed because we want to make a difference. And when you have that cemented firmly across the
Mm.
person you are, and you're in alignment with who you truly are every single day, you're going to create some magic for someone else. And we hope we're doing that, and we know that many other organisations, like you said, across Australia are doing a phenomenal job at that.
Definitely, mate. Absolutely. And with that being said, and being really focused on why we wake up every morning, and being laser focused on our purpose and our visions and missions and values and everything else, for those of the people who might be listening right now that haven't really fine-tuned that, they don't really know what their vision, purpose, and passion is, I guess, what would be some words of wisdom from Matty Runnalls to these guys that might be listening?
Yeah, I think it's understanding, mate, that this journey, no matter how hard, difficult, challenging, painful, traumatic it might be, or seem, or has been, it's carving and crafting you into the exact person you're meant to be. So let the world strengthen you. Let the world be and do what it does. It's designed for us, not to us. And when we accept that, and the trip ups that we have, and the pain and that we go through, and we know that if we action it, we can create magic for someone else or for ourselves. It's a great place to live in. So I mean, find what makes you smile, find what makes you feel alive. I think that that's the most important thing, and go after it. There's nothing in this world that can't be done. Our brain is limitless.
Mm,
We can achieve whatever we want to achieve if we set our minds to it, but it's a process and it takes hard work. And like anything, mate, you put time and effort into it, you become good at it. And once upon a time I was a plumber and I wasn't any good at mental health advocacy, and I thought, well, I'm shit at this, but shit is not a final destination.
no.
And so when we put the time and effort into our brain, to our body, to our careers, and to our purpose and passions, we can live a healthy, happy, and fulfilling life and go about the rest of our natural born lives doing the things that make us feel full of joy. And
Yeah,
I
for
encourage
sure.
everyone to not bow down and to accept what society and culture tells you to do and be. I mean, there's so many things out there that we live in a brilliant world, mate, with so many opportunities. And if we just put our mind to it and head down and bum up and surround ourselves with really good people, the world's your oyster.
Yeah, amen to that, man. And it takes work, time, and a lot of hard work. But at the end of the day, what we're always trying to encourage is to speak up and seek help
Mm.
and try and remain proactive, because at the end of the day, it isn't it ain't weak to speak. We say it at Living. We all promote wellness and speaking up and seeking help, but it's also important to set those realistic foundations that at the end of the day, speaking up and seeking help, while it might be the best thing to do, it's also it takes work and time. And you shouldn't be misled with, okay, I'm going to speak up once and it's going to be perfect and everything's going to be right. Speak up, learn, ask for help. If it doesn't work, learn, ask for help. If it doesn't work, learn, look at else other measures on that menu, or the self-help, or the tools on the menu where you can reach out for help to get back on track and start living a really fulfilling life. And it all starts within yourself. But also, I find, Maddie, the responsibility a lot of the time as well should also fall on, friends and family, to ask questions, to
Yeah.
ask hard-hitting questions, and not be scared to ask those hard-hitting questions if someone, might be feeling off or not well, or, disappointed over something, or that they've seen a mental health professional and they've had a shitty experience. Ask questions, what it was like. Is there anything that I can do to help you? If I can't help you now, let me know when you're ready. Things like that are always
Yeah.
helpful, especially when you're going through a really bad time.
It's the discipline, mate. It's the same discipline it takes for me to live well with bipolar disorder. It's the same discipline it takes of the people around me to look after themselves and to look after me. And it's not caring one day and not the next day. It's not
Mm,
caring and asking me if I'm all right for 1 week and then forgetting it for 6 months, or putting the time into themselves for 1 day and not for another 3 months. It's an everyday process to live in a place of wellness and consistent place of wellness. It's high accountable living. It's high altitude living. Sorry. It's, my three big things are take big risks, remain accountable, and remain positive. And if you live in those things at high altitude, that's where the magic happens. As I said, we can ask someone day after day after day if they're unwell and think we're not getting anywhere, or doors slammed in our faces, or we're getting the lie, I'm fine, spread back to us. But what happens if day 30 they have a breakthrough and they're like, hang on, they're ready to have this conversation. They've held the space for me for 30 days. They want me. They care about me enough to want to keep coming back and have that discipline. And day 31, you have a breakthrough. What have you lost for the prior 30 days? Absolutely nothing. What have you
mm,
gained? You've gained a life, and that's a very beautiful thing. So, as I said at the start, as long as we all know out there, whoever's listening and watching this, as long as we understand that we all have what it takes, and we're all as qualified as one another to give people what they need to be consistently well, and that's love, belonging, and connection.
mm. I love that, man. I love that. And it's all, basic primal human needs. And I think at the end of the day, um, mate, you've summed it up extremely well. Where can people find Matty Runnalls? Where can people find you, mate, and everything that you're doing right now, mate? Mindfull Aus, you. How can people get connected with you? I'm also going to bring you into the Facebook group following this episode, so that you can connect with anyone that might want to ask you questions and whatever else. But where can people track you down, Matty? How can people follow you and support you and your mission and vision?
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff happening at the moment, separate to the charity, which is really exciting. Taking another pivot down the mindset, down our connection, down values, down our core strengths, all that sort of stuff right now. So I'm really enjoying playing in that field, and you find a lot of my work at www.mattarunnalls.com. And my Facebook is Matt Runnalls 91, and Instagram is matt.runnalls. So all those places you'll find resources, tools, tips, tricks, techniques. I mean, I'm obsessed with this field of work, and there's not much else that I write or do with. So yeah, by all means, come and see how you can join in the journey and help other people achieve places of wellness, because that's the true meaning of life, mate.
Mate, you're very inspiring, even sitting here and listening to you. I can tell you right now, mate, everything that you've mentioned, everything that you've said is inspiring. You know, I find it very inspiring speaking to guests like yourself. I'll always learn something new, and I feel like if I'm not learning something new, I'm not living. So, mate, I appreciate you sharing your wisdom, you know, where you're at in your life, what you're working on, what hasn't worked, you know, the importance of self-care and working on yourself and never giving up. No matter how long it takes, never give up on yourself, because you and I both know, Maddie, that it will always be worth it. With the right help and the right support, you know, people can get back on track and they can manage their life and live great. You know, you're living proof. You continue to work on yourself every single day, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm very grateful that you're also a good mate of mine, mate, that, you know, that I've had you on the podcast. It's been a long time coming, and I'm very excited to share this with our audience. And I'm looking forward to working with you in the near future on some type of initiative, mate. No doubt we'll be working together.
Absolutely, mate. And just a big thank you on my end and from the whole team at Mindfull Aus. I mean, I jumped into this journey after Livin, and I know that yourself, Casey, Lukey, Amy, the whole team there at Livin have been big supporters of the work that we do and have helped me along the journey get to the place in which we're at. So, yeah, it's a beautiful thing when people come together and like-minded, compassionate people share their wisdom with each other. That's definitely going to make these wheels in the cogs to wellness turn a lot quicker than they were previous. So I'm very grateful to Liv and to yourself and to everyone in that community doing amazing work and making it easier for a lot of people out there to get up and go again today, tomorrow, and every day after that.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I appreciate it. And the importance of community, hit it on the head. Stay connected, guys. Stay well, especially during these times. The importance of staying socially connected is more important now probably than ever. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to someone who might be in need, or reach out to someone if you're in need, because, you know, I think you'll never regret it, and I think it'll always be a right step in the right direction. Thanks, Matty Runnalls. Thanks for everything, mate. Take care. Look after yourself down there in Melbourne. Keep a mask on. Practice social distancing, and stay socially connected. Much love,
Awesome.
brother.
Thanks for having me.